So Francisco Ferrer y Guardia. He was a Spanish anarchist who has set up the modern school in Spain in 1900 sometime, and wound up getting shot in 1906 or so. So this is about 105 years ago. And you know, there's 100 years ago, but still it was 100 years ago, and there was all this totalitarian fascism that was totally acceptable and was totally okay. This is America. It's not for Americans to be America again, okay? And how Americans are going to be American? Well, not by going through totalitarian, fascist, Prussian, industrial education. Our education system is outdated. It's way outdated. It teaches conformity, blind obedience to arbitrary authority. It's not teaching anybody anything except for it's teaching them to be blindly obedient. And that's actually a bad tactic to live life. The bullies do okay in life, but those who are blindly obedient, they have problems all throughout their life because they're being manipulated everywhere they go. They think they're doing right because they love their oppressors, but they are not doing good. If you cared and you loved about your child, you would teach them like Jean-Jacques Rousseau taught them, okay? So, and Francisco Ferrer y Guardia. He only did it for a year, but wound up being murdered just because he had this, the modern school, which he wanted to use scientific, based on natural sciences, based on technology, and based on moral rationalism. So, that's all we have. We don't have much in this world, but we have logic and reason. And since that's all we got, then we need to go with logic and reason. All of our morals need to come from rational principles. So doing to others you have them doing to you is just wonderfully, beautifully logical. So he wanted to teach, establish a curriculum at the modern schools based on natural sciences and moral rationalism, freed of all religious dogma and political bias. Just let people in a non-coercive setting. So let the kids study and, you know, learn what they want to learn. So it's sort of like the Sudbury model, Montessori, a lot of the schools that actually I will eventually be talking about. I swear I'll be talking about this school. And I don't even know where the list is anymore. I had a list. Oh yeah, biography matters. So all these right? Black schools, Waldorf. They all believe in freedom. Homeschooling, Collins Academy, Mitra, vocational, and St. John's, and then self-education. All of them, except for maybe one or two, but they all believe in basically the freedom, protecting the sovereignty and the autonomy of the individual. We're all sovereign beings, and we need to protect that sovereignty, and we're not doing that. We're not protecting our children. We're not protecting our babies. The states are taking our babies, and they're making them who they want to make them into, but they're not actually educating them to be smart, independent, capable, creative people. And we're going to need smart, capable, innovative, creative people because we're kind of stuck in a rut right now. John Oliver was talking about how he actually fell in love with America during its decline. So you're actually seeing the decline of the empire. The American empire is going down right now. 2008, our financial crisis almost blew up the world. Obama's been able to get us back out of that, but John Oliver's characterization, he said America was like a drunk woman puking all over herself. That's when he fell in love with America. And so that's it shows that America's human, right? And every empire always thinks their culture is better than everybody else. We brag about our liberal democracy. That's what we export to Iraq and to Afghanistan and any country that we take over. But in terms of actually having democracy here, in terms of actually having freedom here, there is none to be spoken of. We're being formed to be cannon fodder for the war machine, or we're being developed to be obedient working people that run the paperwork or write the paperwork and run the machines, but are not smart enough to actually protest any of the, you know, horrible, the vanishing pensions or the horrible working conditions and working hours. So, although students were to receive systematic instruction, there were no prizes for scholarship, no marks or examinations, indeed no atmosphere of competition, coercion, or humiliation. So incredible. And instead of saying, hey, you know, Billy, you didn't learn your school, and then make them sit in the front of class with a dunce hat, like that's like an excommunication. The fact that they would allow these people to go through there, you need to be like Huck Finn. Where is Huck Finn's at? You know, there are no Huckleberry Finns in these days. Where no, you know, Mark Twains and Tom Sawyers. They played hooky. They didn't want to go to school. They didn't want to be civilized, right? They just wanted to be their own person. And so all those students were to receive systematic instruction. So there are going to be classes, right? There's structure there, but there's no prizes for scholarship, but also no marks or examinations. So that way there wasn't an atmosphere of competition, of looking at each other as, you know, as targets to beat. No coercion, do as I tell you, or else there will be violence, which there's fascism in American public schools. It's actually worse. It's totalitarianism. They're not hauling people out. You know, it's not Jewish Holocaust, they're actually not murdering people, but they are murdering massive amounts of souls and spirituality, and they're doing it collectively, just like the slave trade. Go look at any of the pictures of when there was a black man being lynched in the South, and the entire community, the entire white community was dressed up in their Stetson hat and their three-piece tux and their Sunday dresses, right? And they're just all proud, like, look at what we did. We murdered a black man, all of us together, and we're not going to get in trouble because that's what white people do. And all they needed was a thin reason for some justification. All someone had to do was like, oh, he raped somebody. Well, did he actually rape him? Well, who cares? The white woman said that he did, so let's kill him because the white woman said that she got raped. Well, is it possible that she would have said that he raped her because she didn't want the social stigma of being with the black man? Yes. Yes, that's very likely. And the KKK is defending white womanhood, and white womanhood is actually, there's it's supposed to be more moral, more pious, right? Men say that about women all the time. They're so much better than them. Men are just nothing. The woman is just this, really it's just lust, right? They just think they're so beautiful, they're inspired, and then they put all these other attributes on this beautiful woman, which they don't have. If they were moral, pious, and they were everything that they were saying, then they would not have allowed a black man that they had loved, and probably they were the one raping them, they would not have let that person been lynched. But that's what they did. So the classes, in Ferrer's words, were to be guided by the principle of solidarity and equality. So no hierarchy, right? Oh my God, this sounds like my dream school. If I was in 1900s Spain, I would love to have gone to this school. So no competition, no coercion, no humiliation. They're being guided by the principle of solidarity and equality during a period when wayward students in clerical schools were required to drop to their knees in a penitent fashion and then be beaten. The teachers in the Scuola Moderna were forewarned that they must refrain from any moral or material punishment under penalty of being disqualified permanently. So before, you had the nuns that would smack the kids. There was corporal punishment. They still spanking people actually at West Point Elementary School, and that's in Kentucky. They're still spanking them, and I think that's all that the normal schools are teaching. How do you manipulate a whole class when you can't just use violence? It's so much easier just to hit somebody and say, do as you're told, or else I'll hit you, right? That they don't take it genius. That's fascism. That's pure fascism. That's all that is. Do as I tell you, or I will hit you. You're not a genius. You're not smart just because you employ those tactics, and that's very consistent with the state. State has a monopoly of violence. They teach the teacher has a monopoly of violence, and you better listen to the state, or else you will go down. So, instruction was to rely exclusively on the spontaneous desire of students to acquire knowledge and permit them to learn at their own pace. The purpose of the school was to promote in the students a stern hostility to prejudice. So, of course, there's Diderot and Voltaire that some teachers teach facts just to teach the facts, but Voltaire teaches for them, once the facts have actually disappeared, then the hatred of ignorance, hypocrisy, superstition, lying, and tyranny still remain. And that's the point. Yes, we have full of emotions, okay? You should love peace and equality and solidarity and freedom. You should love good quality things, and you should hate the bad qualities. Of course you should. We're complicated creatures. We have emotions there for a reason, and there's a reason why people they prefer peace over war, prefer goodness over evil. So we should hate war and we should love peace. Of course that should be the case, how we get educated. So the stern hostility to prejudice, right? That's discrimination actually with anybody, black, woman, gay, to create solid minds capable of forming their own rational convictions on every subject. So they're teaching them to be moral people. Talk about developing spirituality. That's how you develop a moral core and moral principles, by actually saying what do you actually believe and why is it are those things and good things. So to Francisco Ferrer y Guardia, however, the education of a man does not consist merely in the training of his intelligence without having regard to his heart and his will. Man is a complete and unified whole. Despite the variety of his functions, he presents various facets, but at the bottom, he is a single energy, which sees, loves, and applies a will to the prosecution of what he has conceived. One of the most important tasks of the Scuola Moderna, Ferrer insisted, was to maintain this unity of the individual, to see to it that there is no duality of character in any individual, one which sees and appreciates truth and goodness, and one which follows evil. In fact, the student in American education has to completely be a whole other person from one class to another class. And then these oppressors are writing down, oh, he is not, little Billy's not obedient. And then the next person will, oh, it says he's not obedient. Well, I'm going to say, I see it too. He's not obedient. And then that carries on. That's why you can't label people. You try to label them. In fact, actually, almost see, like, when people have ADHD, they have special rights and special privileges because schools don't know how to actually, deal with that, and so they do give them the freedom and the ability. I remember Brett Alexander in Guardia County. They would put him in a classroom, and he would just tear the classroom up. He would throw the desk and do whatever it is he wanted to do. Oh, he had ADHD. What are we supposed to do? We're not allowed to actually punish him the way we punish these other kids. He's got, a disorder. We can't be seen to be discriminating against a disorder. The other thing about special education kids, they have an individualized educational plan, an IEP. So they'll actually sit down with these folks that have ADHD and say, well, what do you want out of your education? They'll write a contract up with the parents about how the educational program of the child will proceed. And that contract is a legally binding contract. For the other students, for the mainstream kids, for the average students, they have no such contract. It's basically an at-will employment, right? You go to a job at Burger King and they don't like something you said, you get fired immediately. Same thing with the school. You didn't do as I told you, you get out of here. You get suspended. I will punish you in some way, shape, or form for being a human being. How dare you actually have some humanity in my class, right? Julie Chancellor, you can't have any humanity in her class, or she'll smash you. How dare you show a soul or a heartbeat? One of the most important tasks of the Escuela Moderna, right, was to no duality of character. So really there is one person, one energy, sees and appreciates the truth and goodness, and one that doesn't follow evil. The school itself must be a microcosm of the real world, embodying many different sides and human personalities. Hence, Francisco Ferrer y Guardia insisted not only on co-education of the sexes, but on a representative variety of pupils from all social classes. Every effort must be made to bring the children of workers together with those of middle school parents in order to create a milieu for the young that is fully liberatory. A school of emancipation that will be concerned with banning from the mind whatever divides men, the false concepts of property, country, and family. Much of this is pure anarchism and reveals the influence of Lorenzo and Kropotkin on Ferrer's mind. So other anarchists he had read. Arrested in September 1909 in the wake of the popular and violent protests in Catalonia against Spain's highly unpopular war against Moroccan tribesmen. Okay, so there's protests against Spain's war against the Moroccans. So Spain declares war on Morocco, and then some Spanish people are protesting the war. Again, just like Eugene Debs protested World War I, goes to jail for 10 years. How are we going to say that, imperialist, racist Nazi Germany was doing something different than us? We're not putting people in prisons at alarming rates. We don't have reservations to put the people that originally lived here. My God, he looked at the Native Americans of America, what the white European, WASP did to the American Native Americans. Hitler loved that. Hitler loved how how America did that. So really, it's all fascism. Like Hitler was a smart man. I guess in American society, basically, there's a lot of Hitler-esque that's going on. We're the empire. We believe in totalitarian fascism. There are people that's being scapegoated, right? As long as you could call them a criminal, then you could throw them in jail and you can make them slaves. You can say, hey, these are the bad people, these are the good. And then the middle class people, they'll accept, one or two innocent people being offed or killed or thrown in jail just as long as order is maintained. Richard Nixon, he got the middle America to vote for law and order. That's what his political ads were, law and order, right? So get rid of these hippies and all these protesters. He even pulled us out of the war. Nixon did. But they voted for law and order. That was what his campaign was all about. So, okay, so let's see. The events of that week in July 1909 came to be known as the Tragic Week, La Semana Trágica, for which the Spanish government and the Catholic Church selected their most hated enemy, Francisco Ferrer y Guardia, as the scapegoat, the author-in-chief of the popular rebellion. So the author-in-chief, right? He was like the Marat. Within a month, he faced a mock military trial, drumhead court-martial. On October 13th, he escorted to the ditch of many sides in Mount Juich Castle and executed by a firing squad. Here's some of the quotes by Francisco Ferrer y Guardia by Francisco Ferrer y Guardia. It is a well-known fact that people's knowledge about the condition of their lives is limited to what the master class wants them to know. Of course, you know, the master class don't want you to be educated to where you actually take away their jobs and their positions. You know, teachers don't want you to be teachers to take away their jobs. The superintendents of schools don't want you to be, you know, the county, they don't want you to do these things because they want to hold their jobs. So it's best to actually hold everybody down and not give them the education that would actually make them capable of doing the job that you do. Francisco Ferrer y Guardia's quotes, "It is a well-known fact that people's knowledge about the conditions of their lives is limited to what the master class wants them to know." So they only know what the master class allows them to know. Very few are those who think about what they read, and fewer still those who had an opportunity to study the anarchist ideal. So that's true today. We're going to be like the generation, the last generation that has any freedom because we are willfully ignorant. We're the generation, you know, the information generation. Information's all around, but we willfully choose to be ignorant because, heck, you know, we got a decent job, we're making our money, we don't care about the world, we just want to laugh and be, you know, sadistic and be, what's that? Not sadistic, but the sort of the people that only want to take all the pleasure, hedonistic. So they just want to be a bunch of hedonistic people, right? It's all about their pleasure and that's it. So people are still inclined to think that the day should come when anarchists shall rule nobody, would be safe in his person, and nobody feel sure in the possession of the smallest thing, since they aim at the destruction of property. Yet it must be remembered, and we ought to repeat this as often as we can, that in a well-organized society, viz. In the anarchist society, everybody will have his own house, his own furniture, his own clothes, his works of arts, his tools, everything, in fact, that will help him make his life comfortable and happy. That's the agrarian society. That's there's a poet in Owen County, actually, that talks about the agrarian society. Thomas Jefferson wanted us to be agrarian society. When people own a plot of land, then all of a sudden they're a landowner, they're important, right? But also when you own your own house and you own your own land, it gives you an incentive to go out and make money because you have a safe spot for your stuff. When you're renting, this house ain't mine. I don't care what happens to this house. I want to plant some some flowers and stuff and make it look pretty, but really, I don't care. Why should I help improve this person's house? I'm paying this person $600 every month. You can use that money to improve the house if you want to, but really you just want to keep pocketing all the profits, and you're profiting like $400, right? Minus the utilities, right? It's included in it, minus the taxes, but $300 to $400 every month is what my landlord profits. So we should have, there's actually land reform. We should have land reform. Otto von Bismarck immediately says that all the farmers should break their land up to the children. So they each had their own piece of property. And I think that's a good thing. Everybody breaking the property off into equal parcels. Then they have their own property, raise their own thing. They actually care about their own land. It becomes their own purpose. Land reform in Bolivia, land reform in Amerika. Venezuelan land reform. In America, 1862, the Homestead Act, 140 acres. You file an application, you get some acreage out west. That 140 acres is yours to keep as long as you maintain it for 5 years. You maintain it for 5 years, it's yours free and clear. For free. All you do is just fill out an application and say that you was going to use it for farming purposes. So there's haciendas now, right? There's like estates right now that's like thousands and thousands of acres, and then you have like these cities that everybody's bunched up all together renting what little pieces they got. Everybody should have a piece of property. Everybody should have a house and this and that. There should be savings and loan programs. It's ridiculous that we have all these renters out here, but no programs that actually get people into houses. You know, what happened to It's a Wonderful Life? It's a Wonderful Life said that there were savings and loan programs that wanted people to get into houses because, again, you want people to be in houses. It's good for the economy when they have land and they have a house and they want to actually be productive members of society instead of, you know, basically just selling their entire life. You know, if I go work for a job, all my efforts and energy is going to make Burger King money. I come here to make my landlord money, and then the few, minutes that I have of freedom, I'm supposed to get educated and do something else. Like, that's basically impossible. Basically, I'm all tired after working these long hours, these long shifts. And I'm working for somebody else. I don't own my own body. I don't own my services. I don't own the land or the house that I live on. No wonder people like lose their minds because they get nowhere. Being nickel and dime to death, actually it says that today you can have 2 jobs and you keep on getting farther and farther and farther behind. We don't make enough money to be able to pay our bills. This is America. There's a working poor class. People work 40 hours a week and still can't make, minimum wage does not cover all the expenses. So they work 40 hours a week and they're still not able to, cover everything that they need to cover. We shall not pass from the absurd and foolish system of today, founded on authority and property, to one of solidarity and the fraternity as rapidly as things are done on the stage by a quick change of scenery. On the contrary, it will require all the propaganda, all the teaching, and above everything, all the example that we can afford to give in order to make an impression upon the mentality of the irrational, unreflective beings who today form the greatest majority of the population. We anarchists desire to destroy property as it exists today because it is the result of the exploitation of man by man. We privileged assist by the state and of the just right of the stronger. We anarchists think that it is not just that there should be side-by-side owners of vast estates of people who have not a piece of land on which to stretch themselves, persons on whom all riches of the world descend by birth, right of birth, and persons to whom all the sorrow and misery of the world are the only heritage. And actually, land reform is like, in Bolivia, it was done as an anti-communist measure. Communism is we all are together, there's a collectivization of farms, we all work on the farm, we all make money for the state, and then we all get the same amount of stuff. When you have your own property, then you start to understand that when you own property and you own your own things, these are what the conservatives are talking about. They own stuff. So they want to keep on owning the stuff that they have. And the best way that they know how to do that is make sure that there's losers and there's winners. So make sure that everybody else loses and then they get to keep what they got. We anarchists think it is not just that there should be side-by-side owners, right? I already said that. We anarchists do not think that a title deed or a will is sufficient justification for a person to spend his life without working, without contributing to the common welfare. So this is back in the days when landlords and landowners didn't have to do anything. They employed everybody else to do all their work, and they sat back drinking their, tea just like a plantation massa. I think the serfs, right? This is serfdom. So in the anarchist society, the education and instruction of the children shall be such as to point out to them the duty and necessity of work, and that from this duty only those shall be exempt who are physically incapable. Since in the anarchist society there will not be any longer the bad example and the perverting influence of the side of people slaving away all the day long side by side with others whose whole occupation is the change of amusements, since there will no longer be the disturbing moral influence that comes from daily seeing and taking for granted that there should be side by side hungry people and people overfed, right? There's mansions and there's poverty, there's fat people and then there's starving people. Everybody will, as a matter of course, contribute to the production of the common social wealth in proportion to his abilities and power, and food will be assured to all. It will be then, it's like Huey Long and Gatewood Galbraith. It will then be quite easy to the teachers and educators of the day to impress upon the young mind the duty, the pleasure, and the necessity of work. Mankind having attained to a certain degree of reasonableness, it will also be comparatively easy to find out a working arrangement by which everyone could retain possession of the things he likes and cherishes, even without harm resulting to anybody from this right to a form of personal property, or that it should create a supremacy of a class of men over another. In a few words, many today oppose anarchism for no other reason that they are unable to conceive a rational and well-organized society. As long as the education of children, the adults of tomorrow, was left in the hands of both the church and the ruling classes, there would be no hope of attaining the libertarian society that he, as an anarchist, longed for. Education means, in practice, domination and domestication. That's all they care about. Domination, domestication, right? Teachers have inspired themselves solely with the principle of discipline and authority, which always appeals to social organizers. Such men have only one clear idea and one will. The children must learn to obey, to believe and to think according to the prevailing social dogmas. If this were the aim, education could not be other than we find it today. There's no question of promoting the spontaneous development of children's faculties, or encourage it to seek freely the satisfaction of the physical, intellectual, and moral needs. There is question only of imposing ready-made ideas on it and preventing it from ever thinking otherwise than is required for the maintenance of existing social institutions. Of it, in a word, an individual rigorously adapted to the social mechanism. The teachers are merely conscious or unconscious organs of their ruling class's will, and they have been trained on their principles. From their tenderest years, and more drastically than anybody, they have endured the discipline of authority. Very few have escaped this despotic domination. They are generally powerless against it because they are oppressed by the scholastic organization to such an extent that they have nothing to do but obey. Noam Chomsky points out that the reason why graduate school and higher levels of education don't question the authority, they have so much money. Right, I have $50,000 that I put in on it. I didn't oppose it. I almost wonder maybe I should have flat out opposed everything that they were saying, because I should have withdrew. Actually, I should never have actually went to Spalding University. If I went to Moorhead, I would have been teaching 2.5 years ago. If I had anybody that was actually talking to me about how best to organize my life to where I'm successful, then I would have actually been where I needed to be. But because I've surrounded myself with manipulators, exploiters, people that only want to see me crushed and, you know, smashed, we don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to actually interact with each other. And part of it's just man shit, right? Man shit. It's just about domination. I'm over you, so that's how I understand life. I told you what to do. You're my, you know, my slave dog. Hierarchy ruins everything. William Glasser. Read William Glasser. You know, William Glasser was a project that was put to me by two different of the, you know, normal school educators. They said, read William Glasser and then tell me what you think. William Glasser talks about equality. William Glasser talks about, about how the will to power controls everything or destroys everything. So to actually listen and learn to people, you have to sit down and take the time to actually listen and learn. But if you only care about your power over others, well, you only care about manipulating them. You don't actually care about who they are, what they want out of life, and their ambitions and their soul. You only want to smash them. And that's a problem, because if you only want to smash them, you don't actually love them. So equality is when you actually respect the other person, you genuinely care about where they want to go, and you give them advice that helps them proceed, and elevate themselves in life. But that is not the case at Spalding University. Those teacher trainers only wanted oppression and domination, and they're a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, I could go on down with all the hypocrisy that they do, and it's absolutely sickening. They think that they can use any and every tactic by any means necessary to oppress you. But to listen to what they say, you don't win the respect of anybody by being an obedient, bitch-ass nigger slave. Okay, go back to Jerry Farber. It's rhetoric. Okay, it's rhetoric. But I got your attention. And I got your attention because I said, bitch-ass nigger slave. I see oppressors and I see the oppressed. And then there's everybody that's trying to be equal. William Glasser says, let's be equal. The will to power is natural and normal in humans, but it messes up the relationship. Nobody wants to be the slave. Nobody wants to, really, the oppressor and the oppressed are enslaved to each other. The oppressor always feels like they're tied to the oppressed because they always have to tell them what to do. It's like, oh, I got to tell you this, I got to tell you that. It's so hard. Oh, yeah. The oppressed, they're the ones that are, doing what the master says because they want the master to love them. Please just love me. Look, I did this thing for you. You love me now? I did this for you. You love me now? And no, they will never get the respect because the whole point of the oppressor is to manipulate and control you. So they cannot give you the approval that you need as a human being because all they want to do is manipulate you. That's all they care about doing. So they can never say you're good enough. You're good enough. Finally, you made it to the level. You're good enough. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club of equal men and being free along with everybody else. They can't do that. They want to maintain the domination and control, and the best way to maintain the domination and control is lots of tactics, but really, violence. You can use humiliation. You can insult the persons where they think they're dumb and they don't know anything about what's going on. Make sure they're dumb and incompetent, and they never get self-confidence to actually be able to do anything for themselves. So there's lots of tactics that the oppressors use. They use this is the teacher. This is the American education system. They'll call the parents. The parents are beating up your kids. They don't care. That actually is used to the advantage. Oh, your mom and dad beat you up? Well, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to call your parents and I'm going to tell them what you're doing. I'm going to tell them that you're not obedient little slave dog to me. So I'm going to call your parents and they're going to beat you up. So actually the parents and the teachers are working in tandem together in order to oppress the children. Children's rights? No such thing as children's rights at all. It's only about they want to try to mold them and say this is how things are, but you don't love your child if that's what you're doing. With my own kids, I'm gonna raise my kids the way it's supposed to be, way that they with love and compassion and genuine actual care. And part of me says, if you want to beat your kids, then just let society mess the kids up. But when your kids start shooting up the school, just like this Elliot Rodger, when your kids start shooting up everybody because they're messed up and because you went ahead and oppressed them out of society to where they're a total psychopath, when they're bullying my kid, when your kid is bullying my kid because you're justifying violence against people, right? You can use violence, you can use humiliation, you can use all these tactics in order to get people to comply to you. They'll use the same tactics because they see that's how you get by in life, and they love you, right? They adore the oppressed, love their oppressor, so they're going to do what you, they're going to act like you when you're not around, and when your kid starts bullying my kids because that's the only way they understand how to live life, I got a problem. I got a problem with that, okay? And it's bullshit. So that's the end of my Francisco Ferrer y Guardia and Jean-Jacques Rousseau introduction. These progressive intellectual geniuses, all they had was the thought. Just the thought of being free. Just the idea of writing a book scared society in France, in Spain, and Netherlands, and Switzerland to a degree that they had to put a warrant out for their arrest so they could kill him, or just flat out throw him in a ditch and actually murder him. So Francisco Ferrer y Guardia was murdered because he established a school that wasn't oppressive. Is that why I'm getting what I, you know? Is that me?